Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim. I am the host for this afternoon. We have to say that the reason why we're on Saturday afternoon is because our guest, AVI LOEB, is an acting professor during the week at Harvard, and it's very difficult for him to attend during the week. So we made adjustments to where he would come on during the weekend. Now, he is running late, but I expect him to show up anytime. My panel consists of Nas.
Greetings.
Nancy Timms down in the left corner, and the intrepid Odessa, who is the maven of the chat room. So she will give you instructions in regards to the chat room. Odessa?
Absolutely. Please ask as many questions as you want. Try to put them in all caps. We can see it easier. We can make sure your questions get answered. We got this.
Okay, one thing I want to say is this. I want to give a shout out to all of our supporters. Since March 13th, we have gone up almost 1,000 subs on the UFO Man channel, and we're pushing toward 40,000. We are 523 subscribers away from 40,000. So if you haven't subscribed and you want to, please do so. Because the higher we are in subscribers, the bigger names we get, the better quality content we can provide. So thank you very much to everyone who has already subscribed. I want to say hi to some people in the chat room. David S. Vingman, hello. Pinzer, good to see you.
Lisa's here.
Lisa, good to see you too. Who are our first five, Odessa?
Well, Queen Mary was here hours early, so I'm not sure if Queen Mary's back yet, but Queen Mary, Lisa, Pinzer, and David. Yep.
Okay, hopefully we'll get some more people in here, and that way we can have five. Pinzer says she adores Avi. Well, I'm hoping he'll come here because he's running kind of late, and he may have gotten his time zone mixed up. So I'm waiting to see if he shows up. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to start out with a general conversation first, and then we're going to go into some information that Nos has for us and take your questions from there. Thanks for sharing this out, David. I really appreciate it. So, all right. One thing I would like to ask is the federal government came out recently with a short interview from the Pentagon that stated that after 80 years of documented UFO data, they found absolutely no supporting evidence to indicate any sign of alien life visiting Earth. What do you think about that, Nos?
Well, what I think is that when we go back to the content that was coming out of the government over this last year, and we're talking about, the legislative branch and the work they've been doing, they directly came forward with things that says, this is video footage we've acquired of things that cannot be explained. These are people within the U.S. military that have witnessed those things. They're testifying. We are acknowledging these craft are there. Now we need to know more. And the Department of Defense, with their intelligence apparatus, is denying us access to any further information, and we're mad as hell about it.
Right.
That was the message that came out of the legislative branch. So to have a countermeasure in place to try to fight against the legislative branch, the DOD, through its intelligence departments, is saying, don't look behind the curtain. There's nothing to see here.
Right.
You have the government arguing with itself. And one of them is validating what we all know to be true. And the other one is doing what the U.S. government has always done, which is to deny until you're caught with your hand in a cookie jar, then deny a little bit longer until there's just absolutely no denying it anymore. Right. So this behavior absolutely expected.
Well, I was wondering because it's almost like Project Sign back in the day, because Project Sign said, national security issues, nothing to see here, and they closed the lid on everything. Then it went into Project Grudge, where they started doing the old denial. No, it's a drunk hillbilly in the Adirondacks, or
Right.
on the Appalachian Trail with a beer can, seeing what he's seeing. No, it's not that case.
Right.
There are a lot of credible people having encounters, especially what I'm going to refer to as experiencers, because experiencers are credible people for the most part that are coming in contact with non-human intelligence of some sort or some kind in some way. One of them is Nancy Timms, bottom left. Nancy, what do you say about this?
Well, I think the government just keeps putting a Band-Aid on the situation. They're trying to blow everyone off, because I think they're actually waiting for the James Webb Telescope to find something, because once the James Webb Telescope finds something and says that there's life out here and it's millions of miles away, that is one, it's going to give a lot of people in the UFO community some comfort in knowing, well, they are admitting these things. And the fact that they're saying it's there, they didn't necessarily have to be the ones to do it. They let James Webb do it. And that takes a lot of responsibility off of them. And they're hoping that by the sheer happiness that everyone will have of finding this out, that a lot of people will forget to ask all these other questions of why it was suppressed for 70 or 80 years. So I think that they're just waiting for the James Webb Telescope, and everything in between that point is all like a Band-Aid. It's just, they're just sugarcoating the surface, just trying to get by, waiting for that big event.
Okay, one thing I want to say real quick. I want to introduce our main guest. He has arrived.
Yay.
AVI LOEB is here. So please welcome AVI LOEB. He is a theoretical physicist from Harvard and one of my friends on YouTube. So welcome, Avi.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to join you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. I remember a few months ago, I talked to you about Oumuamua with my friend Anthony from S4. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have you back, because I've been wanting to talk to you a little bit in depth about the meteorite spirals that you found off of Manus Island in the Bismarck Sea. I'm going to move you here for a second, because I need to do this, because it allows me to put you big screen when we talk to you.
Thank you. So we're talking about an object roughly the size of a watermelon, half a meter in size, that collided with Earth and exploded as a result of its friction on air. And the fireball was noticed by sensors aboard the US government satellites. It's a network that the US government established as a warning system from the launch of ballistic missiles. We want to be aware of a situation where an adversarial country is sending nuclear weapons in our direction. So obviously, this network did not exist many decades ago, only over the past decade. And in 2014, exactly a decade ago, it detected the fireball of a meteor. So the US government decided, well, this is not a classified event. It's an object that collided with Earth. So they posted the information about it on a NASA website of meteors. It's called CNEOS, and it has about several hundreds of those meteors that were spotted by US government satellites. And what was unusual about this one is that it was moving, this object was moving faster than the speed necessary to escape from the gravitational pull of the sun. So we concluded with my student in 2019 that indeed it looks like this is the first interstellar meteor that we have confirmation of, an object that collided with Earth and came from outside the solar system. And some of my colleagues were saying, we don't believe the US government. which is a little bit suspicious, because obviously, you know, this agency that monitors the data, the U.S. Space Command, you know, they get $30 billion every year, more than NASA's budget. And they have a very serious team of researchers that, you know, they make sure that their inferences are correct. Nevertheless, I asked through the White House for the U.S. Space Command to double check their data, and they came back with a letter to NASA saying that at the 99.999%, they confirmed that this object came from outside the solar system. That was in March 2022. And you might think, okay, well, that would convince the scientists that indeed this object came from outside the solar system. But no, a year later, there was a paper published in the Astrophysical Journal by astronomers who were arguing, we still don't believe the US government. Why? Because we cannot fit the data about this meteor with our model for stones from the solar system. Therefore, the velocity was overestimated. It's actually 3 times lower than the US Space Command is arguing for. And I say, you know, a factor of 3 kind of a mistake, you know, is unheard of in terms of measurements that the US government is making. And it's really an insult to the US government for an astronomer to say that. Nevertheless, that appears to be the mainstream. Anyway, so I followed the data, and the fireball location was specified by the Department of Defense to within 7 miles. There was a box that they defined as the location. We went there, okay, and we surveyed the ocean floor, which was roughly a mile deep, and collected 850 molten droplets in that site of the meteor. And out of those, after 8 months of analysis at Harvard University in the laboratory of Professor Stein Jacobson, a world-renowned geochemist with the best instruments in the world. He has a mass spectrometer, electron microprobe, and also in the laboratory of Dr. Roald Tagel at the Bruker Corporation in Berlin, Germany. You know, we concluded after 8 months that about a tenth of those molten droplet spherules that we found, a tenth of them, about 80, have a composition that was never reported in the scientific literature, where some elements are enhanced by up to a factor of 1,000 relative to the standard solar composition of materials that made the solar system. So we just summarized it in a scientific paper, you know, and immediately the critics came along, and first they said, oh, it's coal ash. And so we checked 60 elements from the periodic table, found that it's not coal ash. Okay. And then they said, oh, you went to the wrong place because we don't believe the US government. So we went to, those scientists went to check some other publicly available data, not the US government data. And based on that, they concluded that, in fact, you cannot localize very well where the meteor was. So they say, oh, if we ignore the US government, then we don't know exactly where the meteor was. Therefore, you may have gone to the wrong place. And some of this unreliable data that they looked at, you know, it could have been a truck. So now all these reporters, and that includes science journalists, reported the meteor could have been a truck. Just because those scientists ignore the US government data, say that they don't believe it, and then they use much lower quality data to say it could have been a truck. Like, how can that be a rational argument? And it's clear that, you know, first of all, they're not telling the truth, because, you know, they cannot just argue that we went to the wrong place because of a seismometer that could have detected the truck. No, we based our region of the survey on the light emitted, not the sound that was generated by the experiment, but the light that was observed by US government satellites. So arguing that we were fooled by a seismometer and that it could have been a truck, you know, that's a lie. Those people know that we were guided by some other data, but they present it in a way that is completely distorted and it's misinformation. So now, I asked the New York Times reporter that talked about it, Matt Richtel, and I said, look, you are ignoring the facts. You're making fun of this expedition, and you are ignoring the facts that we relied on US government data. So he said, well, I forwarded your email to my editor. He never apologized. He never corrected this story. The New York Times never got back to me. They are just providing misinformation to some crowd of people that prefers to dismiss this. And why would they do that? Like I said, if science journalism cannot be trusted, if they don't attend to the facts, then how can we trust anything that they say about politics, about anything else? It's really very disappointing to me that we have this toxic culture that is not following facts and just, they have their own narrative. And, I'm very disappointed. To me, it shows that, our culture is not very intelligent. There is a lot of room for improvement. And the evidence is clear. When a science journalist does not report the facts, then no journalism can be trusted.
Yeah.
Right. But that's why we trust you. So there you go. Knowing that you're one of the smartest men on the planet, Avi, and the fact that you are a very skilled theoretical physicist, I do know for a fact from reading a lot about your papers. I've been reading some of your documents and your papers, and you do follow the math, and you do follow the information, the correct data.
Exactly.
I don't understand all the math, but I get the idea behind it. And what I'm going to say to you, the speed, how they can adjust the speed by a matter of 3 just to fit their narrative doesn't make sense to me, because if it was the speed, then it was the speed. That's just it.
I mean, the point is, if your model doesn't fit the data, you cannot just dismiss the data and say the data is wrong. I was invited to the birth town of Nicolaus Copernicus in Torun, Poland. That was last month. The Polish government invited me to give a keynote speech during a celebration of 550 years to the birth of Copernicus. Now, Copernicus was actually a priest, and the church had a problem. They had a model where the Earth was at the center of the solar system, and they just couldn't get the timing of Easter correctly. It was always off by a few days. So Copernicus looked at the data and said, well, if you actually put the sun at the center of the solar system, everything works much better. So the church said, great, we will use your model. Thank you very much. But that's just a model that we will use because it gives us the correct prediction for Easter. But we will ban your book because we know that the Earth is at the center of the universe. So his book was forbidden until the 19th century. And he didn't want to rock the boat. And so he didn't publish his book until he had a stroke and one was on his deathbed, and only then he was presented with a published version of his book. Now, the one thing I admire about Nicolaus Copernicus is that he didn't twist the facts. He didn't do what my colleagues are doing. He didn't say, oh, the data must be wrong because I know that the Earth is at the center. He didn't do that. He respected the data, and he said, let me put the sun in the middle and figure out if that assumption explains the data better. And that's the way for us to gain new knowledge. That's why we remember Copernicus now. All the rockets that we launch would never reach their destination, would never get to Mars if we thought that Mars moves around the Earth. It was just the wrong model. So respecting data is a fundamental principle of science. Having the humility to say, we don't know everything. Let's just ask, if the data is right, what does it mean? And, that's all I'm doing. But those critics, they're saying, No, the data is wrong because everything in the sky must be stones from the solar system. And there you dare not consider the possibility that there is an object that came from interstellar space, because we don't believe the US government. And moreover, because this object does not obey the same physics that we're used to based on stones that we studied in the past.
Right.
You know, and I call that the stone age of science, where everything in the sky must be stones. And by the way, before 1803, people thought that there couldn't be rocks falling from the sky. They said, we find rocks on Earth. How can a rock come from the sky? And only in 1803, in a French town, there was a meteor shower. And only that, you know, after monitoring all the facts, people realized actually there could be rocks falling from the sky. And now my colleagues argue everything in the sky must be these rocks that we are used to from the solar system. And I say no, you know, because we launched things into space. You know, Elon Musk launched the Tesla Roadster, his own car, as a dummy payload in 2018. So who knows? Maybe there are some other entrepreneurs on other planets that polluted interstellar space with space trash. And, you know, every now and then one of these objects will collide with Earth. So why not be open-minded? Why do we always have, you know, to assume that what we know by now must be the truth?
Right.
Right. One thing I noticed that a lot of the scientific organizations were saying or claiming was the spherules were industrial waste. And
Yes.
there's no, we can rule that out, can't we, Nos?
Yeah,
Yes, we can.
we actually tested that, and we demonstrated by detailed analysis, and I actually wrote a research note about it, and it's also in our most extended paper that is posted online, that, you know, you can rule it out. The abundance of elements, the chemical composition of industrial waste is very different than the composition that we found.
Very.
Yeah,
Right,
so that's
because-
what I was going to say, is that when it comes to manufacturing industry as a whole, there is no metallurgical factory on the planet that is going to intentionally put this composition of minerals together. Would never, ever happen.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's basic logic. They don't think to the next step and say,
Well,
"Wow,
but also ask yourself, you know, if it's a common product, you know, that you can find it everywhere. It doesn't need to be on that site, okay? And if it is everywhere, then why wasn't it reported in the scientific literature before we went there? I mean, it should have been something that everyone would recognize, that you would find in publications where people would say, okay, well, you know, we found 10% of the material to be that way. So anywhere you go on Earth, you would find 10% of the material made of industrial waste of this type. And you would argue, and by the way, Papua New Guinea is not the most developed industrial place on Earth. So these things should be even more common near industries, you know, in countries that have a lot of production of waste. And you know, it's just, it was never reported in the scientific what we had to give it a name because you cannot find it in the literature. So how can people just say, oh, it must be very common when it was never discussed before? I mean, this is just an oxymoron, a contradiction to say, oh, it must be something that is common, but then nobody discussed it.
It's disingenuous, is what it is.
Yeah. And what is the motivation of those people? I mean, they just introduce toxicity. Now, people ask me, okay, well, there are critics. And I say, well, if you look at terrorism, why are terrorists so effective? It's because to construct a building, you know, it takes a lot of work. But to destroy a building, it's very easy. You just put a small bomb and you just destroy it. And that's why terrorism is so effective. Now, for us, you know, it took a year to design this expedition. We went there for a few weeks, didn't sleep much on the boat. We collected materials. That's the scientific process. And we analyzed it for 8 months. But it's very easy for someone to sit on their chair and just dismiss, you know, it basically raise dust in the air and argue that you don't see anything. And so it's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to raise doubt. It's much more difficult to do the scientific work that we did. And for those who want to believe that there is nothing new under the sun, that everything we believe in must be true, then it's an easy route, an easy escape, to dismiss it, basically.
Right. Well, that's kind of odd considering the niche we're in with UFOs. I mean, people believe UFOs, but they won't believe your meteor story, which doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't, because your meteor data is not a story.
It's not a story. It's based on government data. And
It's
by the way,
fact.
I should say I'm still in contact with the U.S. Space Command through the White House. And, there are serious people we're not dealing with. And moreover, the research team that I have includes, like almost 40 people. So it's a big team. And when you dismiss it, you can't just invent a story that it's coal ash, it's industrial waste, that the government data is incorrect. This is like irresponsible, especially on the part of science journalists. I'm very disappointed, frankly. But we are not deterred. We will go again, and the next expedition will seek bigger pieces, bigger than those spherules that were less than 1 millimeter in size. It will cost more money because we will need a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, and we will need the video feed to see what we are picking up. So it will probably be about $5 million for this next expedition. But, everyone is excited that there are potential donors. We're seeking a donor. And if anyone is listening to this that would like to join the expedition, please get in touch with me. And we will do it. That's the way science is driven by curiosity. And people who insist on remaining ignorant will be left behind. I don't have any interest in those people. They insist on being ignorant. They will not do any work. They will just criticize. That's the toxicity that you find on social media very often. Who cares? These are not my friends. I don't want them. I don't have any footprint on social media. I will continue to do the scientific work. And why should I, downgrade my curiosity to their level? They're not worth it. And frankly, there are lots of people in the world that are inspired by this research. And I received, there were millions of people that read my, diary reports during the expedition on medium.com. That's where I put my essays. And so I have a huge base of people that are excited by many young people. Every day I get requests from young people that want to participate in this scientific work because they find science exciting this way. And those critics make science boring. And frankly, they make they give the impression that bullying, is an effective tool in suppressing innovation in science. And I tell them, no, you will not succeed with bullying. The one thing that really bothers me is why is childlike bullying more prevalent than childlike curiosity? This is really strange. Why not be curious about unusual, data and explore it? That is the approach we are taking. So we don't know the answer for sure. We are trying to collect more data, but instead those people are saying there is nothing to be interested in. They want science to be boring.
We got some pictures for you to. I'm going to show some pictures from your mission.
Sure, go ahead.
Island, and you can explain them for us.
Sure.
Here we go.
Okay, so what you see in the top left is the sled that we used. We dragged it on the ocean floor, and it has magnets on both sides. And as I said, the depth of the ocean is about 1 mile. We surveyed a region that was about 10 miles in size, and we would put the sled on the ocean floor and then drag it with the cable that you can see connected to the ship. The cable was about 3 miles long. And we just, at first, we had a difficult time keeping the sled on the ocean floor because the cable was pulling it up, and it was kiting above the ocean floor. But eventually the engineers, the exceptional people that we had on the ship, managed to find a strategy that will keep the sled on the ocean floor. And then, we made 26 runs and collected magnetic particles from the ocean floor, from the region of this meteor. If you show us the images again, there are some others that I can mention. Okay, so here we are on a rainy night, examining the material that was attached to the magnets. The magnets are these circular regions. There are neodymium magnets, and we use the brush and actually sometimes even a vacuum cleaner to collect all the material from the magnets, put it in a basket full of water, and then dry it up. And just go back again. I'll just explain. Go back. So you see here various members of the team. On my right is actually the funder, Charles Hoskinson, that participated. You see in the back a camera, a video camera, and that is the Netflix team that came for the ride. And there will be a documentary, hopefully in 2025, where you will be able to see the research. So it was very exciting. All the stars aligned that we were able to fulfill our mission. Let's continue. There was another image so this is a sunny day when the sled was put on the deck, and then we were collecting the material from the magnets, making sure that we don't miss anything. And you can see the ocean in the background. The ship was rocking, and I used to jog every morning at sunrise, just like I do on land. I maintained my routine. And the filming crew, one morning, they said, we would like to film you jogging at sunrise. And I said, sure, go ahead. And then they asked me to jog 3 times the usual distance that they do. It was of all the 10 miles that morning. And at some point, the director of this documentary asked me, he said, Avi, it looks like you're running. Are you running away from something or towards something? And I said, both. I'm running away from some of my colleagues who have very strong opinions without seeking evidence. And I'm running towards a higher intelligence in interstellar space.
That's amazing.
Great answer.
So here I am holding something. There were some wires that we found attached to those magnets. We did not have a chance yet to analyze them because we focused on the spherules, but we do have them in the laboratory. At first we thought, what are these wires? One of them was made of platinum, and very unusual composition. So at some point we'll get to them. So far we just looked at the spherules that we found. And here is the team again on another sunny day. And the sun is very bright down there, but I still wear these shirts that I had on the ship. In fact, I went to Symphony Hall in Boston a couple of days ago with the same shirt, even though it's freezing cold here in Boston. And as in the reception hall of Symphony Hall, suddenly I saw the president of MIT. And I've never met her before, but she immediately recognized me because by now there are so many media reports and I wrote so much that she knew who I am, and we had a 20-minute conversation. So I find it very common these days that I just enter to a room and a number of people already know who I am. And it's difficult for me to hide, even though I don't have any footprint on social media. I've never been a member of X or Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, all of these.
Right.
Yeah, so here is an example for how we use a vacuum cleaner. You see the person on the left, so he's sucking the material from the magnets. At the same time, he's using water to clear it up, from the magnet. So on one hand, he's holding the source of water, and on the other hand, he's holding the handle of the vacuum cleaner. So, and then we would end up getting the mix of water with whatever magnetic particles were attached to the magnets, and we would separate, of course, dry up the water and put it under a microscope. And it took us 6 days to find the first spheral, and it was really thrilling to find it, because I knew from my experience in the kitchen that, if you find an ant, you know that there are many more ants out there. And so once we found the first spheral, I knew that, there would be more, and we found 50 of them during the expedition. And then when we came back, I had actually a summer intern, Sophie Bergstrom, that was, she decided to shadow me. She wanted to become a science journalist. And at some point she said, can I help doing the science? And I said, of course. I gave her tweezers and a microscope, and she ended up finding 600 more spherals. So I gave her the title, the Spheral Hunter. And now actually she wants to become a scientist. So here is an example of a young person inspired by doing the science.
Yeah,
we do have a comment from the chat room. Anonymous Rex said, we found similar samples, small metallic spherals from our digger expedition in the Uintah Basin near Skinwalker Ranch. We should compare the samples found in Papua to the ones from Utah.
Yeah, so everywhere on Earth, you have some debris from meteorites. The point about this expedition is that we went to a place where there was independent data that indicated that the object came from outside the solar system. So most of the meteors are associated with rocks in the solar system, and like 99%. And if you don't measure the speed of the object before it collides with Earth, most likely 99% of the time, it's actually a rock from the solar system, because those rocks are moving around and every now and then one of them collides with Earth. So you really need to know in advance that the rock or the object was moving very fast, so that you can tell that it was interstellar in origin. And this object was the first one, thanks to the US government data that we knew came from outside the solar system. And once we analyze the materials, we will try to go to another site as well. I mean, in addition to the expedition to find bigger pieces, we will go to the second interstellar meteor. We have a candidate. And once we realize that these meteors from interstellar space have some properties that flag them as different from solar system rocks, then you can go back and search, look through, for example, collections of meteorites, or look through material that you find anywhere and just ask, indeed, does it match? Is it that 1% of that material maybe matches what we found near the interstellar meteor? So, but first we need to make sure that we find those flags that tell us that it's interstellar.
Okay, Odessa says, we got a question. So far, what have you determined based on the analysis of the samples taken? What was the composition of the samples? What was unusual about them?
Right. So we compared the composition to the material that made the solar system. And we found that some elements, like, for example, beryllium, lanthanum, uranium, but many more, are elevated in their concentration. That they have up to 1,000 times larger abundance than you find in the standard solar material. And one way to get that is, for example, if you melt the rock on a planet like the Earth, then some elements sink to the center of the planet and others are left in the crust. And the elements that we found enhanced are those that you might find in in the crust of a planet that was molten. And the question is, can you have a natural process that would do that? And I wrote a paper that was published actually last month, saying that in principle you can, if you have a planet like the Earth coming close to the most common star, these are dwarf stars that are roughly 10 times less massive than the sun. Then they're very dense, these stars, and they can destroy the planet and make basically spaghettify it, make a stream of rocks, and half of the mass of the crust of the planet will be ejected to interstellar space. And when the planet comes very close to the star, the rock will be molten. So that is a process that could give rise to that. But it may be something else that made this interstellar meteor. And that's why we want to find bigger pieces. If we find bigger pieces, they will tell us also what the object looked like. Like you can tell the structure of the object. You can also date the age of the object, because you can have enough material to analyze radioactive isotopes that are used as clocks. They would give you the age, and that would tell us a lot, because we could then conclusively figure out that it's not from the solar system if the age is different than the age of the solar system. And moreover, since we know the velocity of this object before it collided with Earth, we can go back in time and multiply this velocity times the age of the material and figure out from how far away did this meteor, this object came from.
Exactly.
Right. I do have a picture I need to bring up in regards to what we're talking about. This one here looks like it's melted. Like there's molten movement.
Right. So these spherules that we found are molten droplets, and they had different shapes. At some point, my daughter said they look so beautiful. I mean, could you put one on a necklace that I will wear? And I said, no. These are tiny, less than 1 millimeter in size, made mostly of iron. You cannot thread them. And so, altogether we had 850 of them. And they were very distinct, very different than the background sand, as you can tell. This is an example of one that looked like a skull. We call it the skull spheral. You can see sort of it has very strange shape. So they were beautiful to look at, actually.
They are.
I heard somebody call this an alien gray as well.
Just
I tell you.
Yeah, I actually, in one of my diary reports, I referred to this one. It was before we started to measure the composition. We just enjoyed looking at these different spherules that we found.
Yeah, this one's unique.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Then we had a picture of this.
All of these are pictures from the ship. We had a relatively low-level microscope there, and that's what we use to image those spherules. And they do look beautiful, I must say.
Very.
I would like to discuss the nickel content inside the actual spherules compared to intergalaxy meteors. What is the difference in the amount of nickel? What is the percentage?
Well, so we, among the spherules, we found that 78% have a composition including iron and nickel and so forth. 78% can be classified as droplets that came from solar system meteors, things that were known before. But 22% was very different. And not just because of nickel, but because of 60 elements from the periodic table that we analyzed. You can find the details in our paper. And out of those 22% that we call differentiated, because as I said, basically some elements were absent and some elements were enhanced by a factor of up to 1,000. We call them differentiated. Out of those, about half were of the special type that I mentioned that never reported before. So, it's not just nickel. It's not any specific element. It's actually the combination of like 60 elements that we looked at which make those unique. And as to where it came from, it's still an open question, but it's unfamiliar. It's an origin that was never discussed before, and that's what we are talking about.
We have a question. Are there other ways to check for electromagnetic equipment used besides a compass? I don't know what that applies to, but they're asking.
Well, if so, we use a sled with magnets that basically attracted those magnetic particles, and
Right.
in the future, the next expedition, we will try to find bigger pieces, but that will require a video feed where we would see what we are picking up, and
That makes sense.
and it will be a different way. There will still be magnets. Now, if the object had some technologies associated with, if it was not a natural rock, the sky is the limit. We don't know what it could have been. And we will try to collect whatever we find on the ocean floor. So we don't make any assumptions on that.
I do have a question in regards to magnets. In regards to magnets, would the electrical power of a magnet have and cause any interference with, say, technological items you may pick up off the ocean floor that may actually be active in some sort of manner?
So we had two options because, the expedition was, we had the funding at the level of $1.5 million, which was just enough for us to use this sled, which is a relatively, simple probe, because we did not see what we are picking up in real time. We just collected something over a few hours, and then we would bring it up. And so we had two options, either going for magnetic particles using these magnets, or we also developed a sluicing device that was trying to pick up particles based on their density. We were hoping to find maybe fragments of high density, simply because the object had a material strength that was tougher than iron, according to where it exploded, low in the atmosphere. And so we used the sluicing device only one day because we were successful at finding those ferrules with the magnet. So we decided to focus on the magnetic approach. But when we go again, obviously we will look for bigger pieces and not just rely on the magnets, but we will have a video feed that allows us to see what we are picking. Actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
What do you
So
think?
the sled that you're using in the process of this, there's no electronics on that right now, is there?
There were video cameras that were recording what is happening, but we would not be able to see the video in real time, and we would then bring it back. It was sort of at the front in this triangular region that you can see on top of the sled, above the sled. So the video cameras were, the images were analyzed after the fact, just to see, what we ran into. Every now and then the sled would bump into something. There was a funny situation in the first, or maybe in the third day, where the sled came back with white paint on it. And of course, the immediate thing, it was just like a Jackson Pollock painting. You could see a splash of white paint on it, like a modern painting. And I thought, well, maybe it bumped into a bucket with paint, at the ocean floor that was thrown by a sailor a long time ago. But then, with my finger, I took some of it, put it in a vial. We analyzed the composition, ended up being some goo that is, we checked it online, and apparently there is a natural origin for this white goo on the ocean floor. So it was biological. We realized it was biological. It was not a sailor that dropped. That is the way science is done. You don't know what something is. you have some ideas and they may be wrong, and then you realize, yeah, it's actually biological based on the composition.
Okay.
We
'Cause
want to welcome.
was-
We want to welcome to our panel Drew Banky. He came in late. Drew, this is Avi Loeb. Avi, this is my friend Drew.
Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
pleasure to meet you, Avi.
We're discussing the mission to off of Manus Island near Papua New Guinea that Avi Loeb and some of his colleagues took recently in regards to a meteorite that crashed into the ocean around 2014, correct, Avi?
Yes, a decade ago. Mhm.
In the
Amazing.
Bismarck Sea.
Nice.
Right.
Okay. Let's go back to Nos because I interrupted her. Go ahead, Nos.
Oh, that's okay. We wanted to welcome Drew into the party.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the reason I was asking about onboard electronics for the sled is because I know an engineering modification that would drastically shortcut the outputs of what you're doing. It's that for each of the 4 rare earth magnets you have on the sled, if you have an electromagnetic transducer positioned at the corner for each 4, it's going to have a stable electromagnetic field. But when you drag the sled across it, that slight change in the magnetic field that happens at the moment of picking up a spheruleum would allow you to record the GPS coordinates of when that node picked up that device. So when you're up there and you're emptying the sled and you're inventorying which node the nodules are that you're most interested in, you would then have a GPS coordinate for where that was picked up, and you can schedule cross runs of the sleds to find where the line of impact of debris is going on. And the increasing density of debris that you find is going to point you to the primary impact zone.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We knew the GPS of the ship very well, and we knew the cable length, but indeed we did not know exactly where the sled is. So, but in the next expedition, we hope, obviously, we will have electronics that will allow us to tell. I should also point out that the Galileo project that I'm leading developed also an observatory for unidentified anomalous phenomena. It's working. It's collecting data from all over the sky all the time. It's located near Boston at Harvard University. And that is a functioning observatory of a type that was never constructed before, because astronomers they focus on a small region of the sky and they ignore anything that flies overhead. So we built from scratch a new type of observatory that monitors the entire sky all the time. And we use machine learning software to figure out, whether we are looking at birds, airplanes, balloons, drones, satellites, or something else from outside of this Earth. And we've looked over the past few months at hundreds of thousands of objects. So far, nothing that we cannot identify, but we will keep looking. And then we are assembling a copy of this observatory, an improved copy. We're assembling it in Colorado right now, so that will be the second one.
Perfect.
And 2 weeks ago, we received funding from the Richard King Mellon Foundation, very prestigious foundation, to build the third observatory in Pennsylvania. So hopefully within a year, we will have 3 observatories. And the sky is not classified. We don't need to rely on the U.S. government to tell us what's out there, and there are all kinds of reports from the past, and people are anxiously waiting for the U.S. government to explain what they saw. But, this could be part of science. There is no need to rely on the U.S. government, which is mostly, they have a day job of national security. They care about adversarial countries. And it's the job of scientists like myself to figure out what lies outside the solar system. So if there's anything that from outside the solar system near Earth, then we will be interested in it, even if it's 1 in a million objects. And we will let the public know whatever we find that appears to be anomalous.
It's amazing.
We have a simple question for you. Did Avi get seasick at all?
That's an excellent question because my wife was worried about it, and so first I took a pill. There is a pill called Bonine that you can take once a day, and but I was so focused on the work that really didn't bother me at all. I would sleep on a couch in the conference room. I never went to the cabin. We had those double beds and banks, and I never went to my cabin. I worked, and then slept in the same conference room. And in the morning, I would wake up at sunrise. They would wake me up also for every time the sled came back. And because I was the chief scientist, so they wanted me to be involved in any work that is done with the materials that we collect to make sure that everything is done properly. So they would wake me up to when the sled came back. Usually we would send the sled for 8 hours, and then it would come back on deck. And that happened during the day, happened during the night. And in between those runs, I try to get as much sleep as I can and write the diary reports that I wrote. And so it was a very hectic schedule, and I just didn't have any time to get seasick. I never got seasick, perhaps if I went on a cruise just for fun, I would have gotten seasick. But the ship itself was rocking all the time. That it wasn't as if it's a very smooth ride, but it didn't bother me at all.
One thing that I noticed that some people have been asking me below a lot of the videos I put out, what about the Apophis asteroid that's supposedly headed toward Earth, possible impact in 2029?
Yeah, so there are a number of asteroids that may come very close to Earth. As of now, none of them is predicted to really collide with Earth. But you have to understand that all these predictions have some uncertainty because, the motion is not precisely measured, and they may potentially have some chance of colliding with Earth. By the way, the Tesla Roadster that Elon Musk launched, the calculation that some astronomers made is that in about 10 million years, it will collide with Earth or be absorbed by the sun. That's the calculation. So 10 million years, eventually it will come to haunt us. All this debris that we are sending out, we have to be careful because it can come back.
I wonder if the mannequin inside the Roadster will be waving goodbye as it impacts.
One thing I can tell you is that if astronomers were to see such a car approaching Earth, they would either say, it's a rock of a type that we've never seen before, but it's a rock. Or if they look at the data from the US government, they would say, it doesn't fit our model for stones, therefore the data must be wrong.
Right.
Data must be wrong because we didn't get the model we
exactly.
came up with. We have to be right. The data's wrong. We have to be right. That drives me crazy.
Nancy, what do you think about all this?
I absolutely love it. I wish I could get on the boat and go. I just absolutely love it because our ocean floors are so unexplored and there's so much down there. And I'm a contactee, so when I saw that one little ampule that looked like an alien, that was that's their way of sending a message to you that you're on the right track.
Yeah,
that
maybe.
Gorgeous.
Maybe.
That is alien, big time. Yeah. So, and they want us to find these things. They want us to reach higher consciousness and expand our minds and open up to things. And this is just, thank you for doing all this. This is a beautiful thing, regardless of what other people are doing to stop you. A lot of people, you're reaching a lot of people and the message is getting there. So that's what.
Thank you. I see of the people that support this work as the reasonable crowd of people. The others are just afraid of learning something new.
Right.
And, we had such people all along history, but hopefully we will prevail. And, I will definitely continue. On Friday, I had a podcast and the interviewer said, with respect to searching for unidentified anomalous phenomena, maybe we should broadcast a message and say, please reveal yourself to our instruments. We would be glad to engage with you. If there is anyone listening, around Earth, maybe they will do something different.
Yeah.
So,
But I'm
That's
like your daughter.
possible,
I would wear that around my neck big time.
I would. Earrings, please.
Mhm.
Yes.
They're so pretty.
Yeah,
It
but
is.
I
they're
know.
so rare. I
I
doubt
know.
that would.
well, they're
yeah.
also expensive. Think about it: $1.5 million for
Like,
850 of them, and so
right.
each of them is quite expensive.
Yes. No kidding.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's out of my range. But anyways, I want to say this to Avi. There are a lot of people out there that actually are very interested in what you do, because I've seen a lot of good channels that are focusing on your type of data and your type of research. So keep the faith.
Thank
Keep
you.
the faith. There are
Thank you.
some good people out there, and we're trying to do the best that we can as well. And
Thank you. I mean, it's not easy sometimes because these critics are quite aggressive and they mislead the journalists. But
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate that they get their voice without doing any work.
Yeah.
But I just decided to ignore those critics that do not make much sense and continue with the research. And at this point, we just need the funding to move on with the plans for the expedition. We are already gearing up in terms of designing the instruments we will use. So you can rest assured that we will do the work.
Well, we
do
appreciate
you
that. We prefer
do you
fact
ha-
over sensationalism. So,
yeah,
thank
do you have a link or an address that people can go to donate to your
yeah.
future mission?
So there is the Galileo project website at Harvard University has a button on the top saying support us. But if the donation is significant, above $10,000 or so, I can process it through the development office that we have. So anyone that just need to contact me with if it's a large donation. If someone wants to fund, for example, the expedition, they should just contact me. But otherwise, if it's small amounts, we do have a support us button on the Galileo project website of Harvard University.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Links in the chat.
Can you also tell us where your papers are located again?
Yeah.
People can go to and read.
So we have some papers on the Galileo project website under publications. We have regarding the expedition. By now there are 5 publications over in 2024, and I'm planning to post them also on the Galileo project website. I will do it actually, thanks to your question. I will ask someone to put it there right now, and hopefully by the end of the weekend it will be there. So you could just go to under publications. There is a button in the Galileo project, and you will find some of our publications there.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad that I could help in some small way. But I want to thank you very much, Avi, for coming today. I really learned a lot, actually, a lot more than I read. And I stand with you, brother, in regards to the fact that those critics are trying to act like experts. And the thing that I've always said, there are no experts in our field or any other field. We're all just learning. We're on a learning curve.
Exactly.
And critics, to me, are mainstream trolls. They're just trolling you. And you're making a difference when you start getting trolled. That's exactly the case. And, sir, you are making a difference. So keep your chin up. We're behind you. We want you to know that.
Everybody should go donate to the Galileo project. Everybody. Yes. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I will do my best to justify your trust. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, we hope to have you back on in the future when you have more findings after your next mission. I will definitely follow up with you on that because I've been following your work since you dug deep on Oumuamua. And I do have a question about that. A lot of people are saying that Oumuamua turned around and
No,
re-entered our solar system.
So, well, it's receding away from us. It's running away. We don't see it anymore. So all the information we obtained on Oumuamua was when it was close to Earth, back in at the end of 2017. And since then, we didn't get any new information. So it was very puzzling. It was most likely flat, had an extreme shape, and was pushed away from the sun, roughly the size of a football field, and no cometary evaporation. So it's still very puzzling. But next year, there will be a new telescope in Chile called the Rubin Observatory that will have 3.2 billion pixel camera and will survey the southern sky every 4 days. And we estimate that it could detect an Oumuamua-like object every month. So stay tuned for 2025. Once we find more examples, we will figure out what these objects are. Perhaps, they might be quite different than the rocks we are used to.
I have a question.
Perhaps they're an AI-controlled alien ship. We never know.
Yeah,
Is there-
so next time around, we will be much more curious about the next Oumuamua, and hopefully we'll get much more data about it. That's what we're planning to do.
Go ahead, Odessa.
I was just going to ask, do you know if there's a working title for that Netflix documentary that may be coming out next year?
No, they did not tell me if they have a title. So they're still working on the editing, and they haven't given me a title. I'm also starting to work on a book that will describe the expedition. So,
Awesome.
And there will also be a children's book that I will also write, hopefully.
Excellent.
So you will get all the information, hopefully in 2025.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's go around the group and take last comments. Nancy?
I want to thank you for all that you do. And it's very exciting. I think this is the most exciting time for all of humanity to be alive. And you're just, putting it out there for us. And there's so many of us that are excited by our future and what we're going to learn. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. And, I don't feel any different than any other person. I'm just curious, and I'm privileged to be able to answer the questions that we are all interested in. And, we will figure it out. If we are not alone, it will change our future. Just like finding a partner in real life, it changes the meaning of your existence.
Yes.
Right. Drew?
Yeah, just thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing the information. The physical aspects of what's going on is, my main focus is more the consciousness aspect of this disclosure, but the physical aspects of it is just as important. We need to put all these puzzle pieces together. So I appreciate you, and I'm sorry for coming in late, but yeah, I appreciate everything that you shared. So
thank you. Well, the future will be much more exciting than the past. So the fact that you were late is not so important in the long run.
Right.
for sure.
Odessa?
I think I already did my last question.
Your monologue?
Yeah, I already asked about the Netflix show that's, maybe coming up 2025 for people who just jumped in literally last minute. 2025, there may be a Netflix documentary about the whole thing. Definitely worth a rewatch. There's been a couple people asking about stuff that we already talked about at the beginning, so please rewatch the show, because absolutely everything you're asking was answered. So just thanks for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Odessa.
Knots?
Fact over sensationalism.
I feel your pain when it comes to the failure of legacy media. And I know that a lot of that is actually reflected in the direct scientific field itself, where it's what I call the Paragon problem. And it's been for every generation of humanity from the start. It's the assumption that they have all the answers, so anything outside of those is unacceptable. And every generation of humanity was certain it understood everything about the nature of the universe. So they continue by saying there is nothing else, holding themselves back from discovery and exploration. And that is criminal. That is absolutely criminal.
Right. I mean, the only way for us to learn is, by not being arrogant, by being humble, and basically, it's just like growing. If you were to get attached to the skin that you have and put a masking tape around it, the old skin, you will never shed it to develop new skin. And science is work in progress. It's the knowledge we have is just an island in an ocean of ignorance. So it's a process of growth, of learning, and a lot of people get attached to their ego and they want to pretend that they know much more. So I usually tell young people, never pretend to be the adults in the room. You should always pursue your childhood curiosity. And I say I'm just like a kid, trying to figure things out. And I met with students in the elementary school where I studied a few months ago, and I told them, look, I'm just like you, and I'm just a curious kid. And they said, one of them said, how is that possible? We read about you, you're 61 years old. And I said, well, it's not a matter of biological age, It's an attitude where you are curious and just, trying to follow whatever the evidence tells you.
We do have one comment in the chat room. I have to tell you, well, two. TET says it's his 100th time of watching AVI, so that's cool. And then Odessa said, AVI rocks, hashtag AVI rocks. Get it? Ba-dum, da-dum, dum. Couldn't help it, she said.
I couldn't resist. No.
Thank you. That makes my day.
People are dropping in left and right. Everybody wants to watch what you have said so far today. Paranormal Underworld just dropped in. So hi, Jax. I'm just going to shout out to Jax there. What I'm going to say is this. We intend to have Avi come back on at his leisure and at his convenience because he is a busy professor at Harvard. So give it up for the man. He is fighting the good fight for all of us in regards to credible data,
Thank you.
Which is what we all need to infuse the UFO community with.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
More, just stay tuned because more to come.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you.
We want to tell everybody that next week we have Jesse Marcel III. He is the grandson of Jesse A. Marcel. Jesse A. Marcel was the first person to actually allegedly handle the Roswell debris.
Mm-hmm.
He will be here on the 27th at 9 p.m. EST, so we hope to see you there. Okay, so thanks to everybody who participated online. Thanks to everybody who participated in the chat. We hope to see you this next Wednesday, which is 4 days away, for Jesse Marcel. And have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.